Welcome back to another episode of Wicked Energy with JG. I'm here for round 2, which most people, he's never been on the Wicked Energy podcast. He was on the old one I was on. I got my man Jake Corley here from Digital Wildcatters in the Digital Wildcatters new but old school but new school studio. Jake, tell us what's up, man.
Dude, this is the OG studio.
Yeah, it is.
This is it. This is where it all started.
It is. Actually, I've been in here and recorded a few times back in the day when you guys first got started. I actually think I was in here with Yusuf.
Probably.
And me, you, and Colin and Yusuf were in here chopping it up, talking about I don't know what. But yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you on. Give us a recap, man. Like, actually, real quick, speaking of stories, we're just telling a bunch of stories, but BP, the Bernard Looney, I mean, what's your thoughts about that? I think it's kind of funny that came out, and I don't know.
What's the news? Because I've been living under a rock lately.
So it came out. So yesterday he abruptly resigned from BP.
Didn't know that.
Okay,
this is breaking news. For
breaking
me. Didn't
news.
know.
Okay,
so give me the situation.
Yeah. So again, Financial Times came out, and then everyone else came out and said basically, hey, Bernard Looney, he had some inappropriate relationships, or he had some relationships with people within the organization that apparently he shouldn't have. And then he abruptly resigned because obviously either whether it was a whistleblower, I don't know. There's probably news on it today, but the headline yesterday and what happened was basically, so that the CFO now took his place, but he was having inappropriate relationships with people within the company, which it's not it's not going to be the last time. It's definitely not the first, but man, that's a tough signal, especially when you've been competing against, people like Chevron and Exxon, and then that happens, and then their stock already wasn't doing as great. So I don't know. That's
a bold move to be the CEO of one of the largest companies in the world to go down that path.
Yeah. Which again, it happens more often than not, but it's, I posted something on LinkedIn yesterday. Everyone's just like completely shitting on him. Like, he's a terrible CEO. And on top of that, they're all this renewable stuff that they're doing. And then on top of that, like, their stock sucks. I'm like, I don't know. I can't really measure whether or not he was a good or bad CEO, but man, that's a blow to them, and again, their stock and everything else. So they've done
arguably probably more greenwashing than I think just about anybody. I think from like a messaging perspective.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they've gone through all these like rebrands a few different times, and it's like almost like they're not proud to be from oil and gas, at least from HQ. You talk to a lot of employees from like the bottom up, and it's a totally different sentiment. But I think that, I think a lot of people kind of have the same view of that organization.
Yeah.
And so this definitely doesn't help.
No, it doesn't, man. It just, breaking news. I thought that was crazy. What else is going on? What's got you excited nowadays, man? Besides Digital Wildcats, we're going to get into that. I mean, I know you,
man, this is like all I think about. That's why, like, I don't pay attention to the news. Like, I barely pay attention to like social media. It's like I've stayed in my lane, as has kind of the rest of the team, and just trudging forward.
Yeah,
this has been, dude. And we kicked this off in like 2018 or 2023 now, so like 5 years.
Yeah. Does it feel like it's been 5 years? Or it feels like
in
it's
some
been
ways
10 years underwater holding your breath?
Sometimes it's like it feels, it feels like it's been a long time, especially like. We did this like State of the Union podcast, and I'm going back and looking through the archives of old podcasts and videos and photos from events and stuff. And you're like, man, that just seems like forever ago. But then sometimes it just seems like it was, just yesterday that we were in this room with like desks set up, and we had a couch over here. We had a projector on the wall. And this was it. And it was just like me, Colin, Julie.
Yeah.
No employees, no money. Wasn't really sure like what we were doing or which direction that we were going in, and it's just wild that I don't know. It's just been a crazy journey. Journey. I wake up every day and I do my journaling in the morning, and it's still never lost on me how weird all of this is and how it's like played out. And just grateful that it's very odd to like tell people what I do for a living if you're not familiar with it.
Yeah.
Because it is something that's kind of like rare, but it's been a good journey.
Looking, because obviously growing up, you would have never thought you'd be sitting here in a podcast studio doing what you're doing. But like, do you often like, does it ever mess with you mentally to think like, am I doing the right thing? Because I ask myself that all the time. I'm like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing?
You should ask yourself that all the time. Right. To like constantly like check yourself, right? Like, am I on the trajectory towards my North Star, towards my purpose, towards the the monk culture, my dharma.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever you're meant to be doing with your life. And I think that you have to constantly be reevaluating that. And so, this is like, I wouldn't have guessed it.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. Like the way that everything's like, is kind of like played out. Like thinking back to being a kid in, junior high and high school, I was a really creative kid growing up. I was playing music. I was playing in bands. I was classically trained on violin and playing in orchestra, then picked up a guitar. I've been playing guitar for 20 years now.
Wow.
I was really into graphic design. I was into like video and photos. I was into all of that. And there were plans. There was a couple different things that I was evaluating. Like I was like, I'm going to go do something with this creativity. This is like, I'm like a freshman, sophomore, whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to do something with this creativity. And so my options were pursue music. And so go to the Berklee College of Music. It's like the best music school in the world.
Yeah.
And so I had looked into that. Or go to something like there's a college called Full Sail in Florida where you can do graphic design, you can do web design, you can do video editing, you can do filmmaking, like all sorts of stuff. You can do like a mash of those kinds of things.
Wow.
And so it's like a college, but it's not a college. It's more like a technical school for like creative arts.
Wow. Okay.
Then there's the Art Institute, which kind of does some similar stuff. And so I'd evaluate all these things. And let's think back to that point in time. Like, dude, social media didn't exist.
Right.
Half the tech companies that we know about didn't exist. YouTube was like, I don't even know if that was a thing back then.
Yeah.
And so the feedback that I was getting from adults in my life was, you're not going to make any money doing that. And like, you know what it's like to be broke. We were lower middle class growing up.
Yeah.
You know what that's like. And I kind of had this weird self-awareness from a pretty early. I started working at like 15. So I think I was working around this time too. And I liked making money. And so that was something that resonated with me. I was like, man, I don't want to be like a starving artist. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think in a lot of ways, once I kind of, graduated high school, I kind of just took all that creativity, packed it in a bag, and I said, I'm going to go figure out ways to make money.
Right.
Instead. And so I remember going to college for the first time. I was like, I'm just going to go pursue business because I have no clue what I want to do in my life.
Right. Which is such
like,
a common, it's like, I don't know what I want to do.
It's just like, I don't know. Let's just go study business. Right.
Yeah.
And then, everything kind of played out the way that it did, and went off to the Marine Corps and all that kind of stuff. And then,
yeah. So was the Marine Corps something that it was just like, I don't know what else to do, therefore I'm going to go serve my country? Or is it like, was it something that you knew?
This is a really controversial thing, and I'd never really like talked about it publicly, but I feel a little weird when people are like, hey, thank you for serving, because there was not a single ounce of me at that time was like, I want to serve my country. That's not why I did it.
Okay.
I did it because I had a little window of like self-awareness to say that if I didn't get any discipline in my life to harness my abilities to channel into something productive,
wow,
I'm going to go down the wrong path and not ultimately get to where I wanted to be.
Crazy.
And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be, but I knew what I didn't want to be.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that was what I was surrounded with. And so I had a great job at the time for being in high school, and I could have gone full time there. But it was one of those things where it was like, I was seeing people who had been there, and it was just like, I don't really like the job. It didn't like light me up. I was like, I just can't see myself doing this.
Yeah. And
I knew that I was a little shit. Like, I knew that I was entitled for no reason. I'd never faced any adversity in my life. I had a great childhood. And so I did the hardest thing I could possibly imagine. It was like, not just go to the military, but like, I'm going to go to the Marines. So I walked in, signed up, shipped me out. I was gone in 3 weeks. And so that really instilled lots of discipline, showed me what hard work was, and allowed me to harness all of this energy that I had into something that was like productive. And it gave me more perspective on like what that actually looks like. And then it further reaffirmed for me, like I had always kind of known that I didn't want to do the typical 9-to-5 thing. I wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
But I was never exposed to entrepreneurship. I was never exposed. We didn't have family friends who owned businesses. Like,
right.
That was not something that I thought was available.
Yeah.
In kind of the world. And so, yeah, it just kind of further confirmed for me because the military is like the worst corporation in the world. It's like, they overpay all of their vendors. It's highly unorganized. It's a toxic culture. There's like a billion other things. And so getting out, I was like, oh yeah, 100%. I was like, I'm never working for anybody again.
Right.
Wow. And yeah, just kind of carried that out. And then when you got out, and then was like, I'm going to use my GI Bill. And then one thing led to another, and then ended up meeting my first business partner, and dropped out.
Crazy. Actually, it's funny you say that. I'd be willing to bet that most kids going into the Marine Corps or anything like that, probably less than half are like, I want to serve my country. And there's probably some that are like, no, I'm here to serve my country and I will die for my country.
Yeah. I didn't meet my parents' minimum expectations in school because I just wasn't going to class. Big surprise. And so they were like, financially, you're dropped in 3 weeks. So you have a choice to make.
Which is, I love that.
So it put the fire under my ass. And so I had to make some pretty drastic decisions. And I was like, you know what? I can go see the world. So signed up. And also, like, let's keep in mind, I was the same height, but I was not this build then. I was like Steve Rogers before he came Captain America, before he goes to anything. Okay. I was tiny, skinny, not athletic, barely worked out. Like, yeah, it was a tall order for me to like just go into the Marine Corps. My whole family was like, this was not a smart decision. You should have gone to the Coast Guard. You should have gone to the Air Force. Should have did anything else.
Like, if I'm going to do it, I'm
like,
all
no.
in,
I was like, no, I'm going to show you guys what I'm made of. Yeah. And it was also proving it to myself too. Because like boot camp at that point in time, that was the hardest thing I'd ever gone through in my entire life.
Wow.
I needed that.
Yeah.
And that gave me, for one, it showed me what was possible. Right. And then that just unlocked, I don't know, some new abilities in me.
Well, it kind of goes back, and you're a father now too. And so it's like, you really can only gain satisfaction through struggling and then achieving something. You know what I mean? Like,
if everything's just given to you, like you play a video game and you just have the cheat codes and everything's unlocked and you don't have to work for anything.
No,
is it
perfect
fun?
analogy? No.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's like, oh, well, I have
it's
all things.
It's so easy to do, and it's attractive. It's like, let me just throw in this cheat code so I can get to the finish line, and then the next thing you know,
there's no game to it. There's no sport to it.
Yeah,
and then you don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
So like, the harder you work for something, the more you appreciate it.
Yeah. No, that's one thing, talking about like, being a father and like trying to instill that with our kids. Cause like the reality is like, if my wife and I continue down the same trajectory, there's a high probability that our kids, I mean, yes, they'll have to work and they'll have to earn an income and take care of themselves, but we could set them up for a pretty cush life unless they just completely mess it up. Mm-hmm. But it's like, how do you, like, we don't want to, like, you can't be hungry if you're spoon fed your whole life. You know what I mean? And so it's like, do you manufacture adversity? Do you force them at the age of 18? You cut them off and don't give them shit until they can prove that they're actually worth something. Like,
I think about this all the time because,
too, man.
The saying is, hard times make strong men create easy times create weak men create hard times create strong men.
Yeah.
And so you think, and then you also, I've spent a significant amount of time studying a lot of these kind of turn of the century tycoons, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Carnegies. Mm-hmm. And then let's use the Vanderbilts, for example. What's his name? The guy who's on, was it like CNBC with the white hair, the news anchor, Anderson Cooper.
Yeah.
He's from the Vanderbilt line. He wrote a book and it like further detailed some more of like the inside information around just like the family. But most of the time, 3 generations, if you have like generational wealth, like some of the wealthiest families in the world, which the Vanderbilts were, all of that's lost by the 3rd generation, right?
Yeah, because they don't.
And it's like, because there's no, they're absolutely spoiled. They don't know how to spend. They don't have any skills. They've been like pampered their entire life. So I think about that a lot. I'm like, how do I make sure my kids are not like that? And do I manufacture the adversity? What are the lessons that I'm trying to teach? There's a lot of things, like the most important things in life, I was never taught in school or taught even at home. It's like things that I've learned even recently. Yeah. And so writing out kind of the lessons that I want my kids to learn. I asked Toby the same thing. Toby Rice, when I was in his house a couple weeks ago, and we're like walking through like his backyard or whatever. And this was something that came up. And I was like, for some reason I was thinking about it. I was just like, hey, how do you make sure your kids aren't little shits? Yeah. And he immediately responded with core values. And he was like, we have core values for the company, but I have core values for the family. He's like, watch this. And so he like spit off, hey, what does this mean on the core values? And he has it everywhere, plastered across the house too. The core values for the family. Yeah. Like, so out by their pool, he's got like written on a tree out there. and stuff. And so, and the kids know what all these things mean. He was like, we'll see. They're young. He's like, we'll see how it plays out. But he's like, I believe that that's what is really going to instill, the right values in them as people.
Dude, that's
to be successful.
And I love that because like I treat our family like a business, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm the CEO, my wife's the CFO. Like we kind of have our own roles and responsibilities. And just like any successful business typically has a vision that's well defined, which changes, but you have a vision, you've got a mission statement. And so I've heard similar from other, I'd say, high performing individuals who have done things beyond my wildest dreams. And they bring it back to like the family mission statement, the family core values. And again, like if you instill it from an early age, just like as a business, if you get everyone who comes on, if you onboard people and you suffocate them with here's our vision and here's our core values, and this is how we make decisions based off of these, chances are everyone's going to band together and you're going to head down the right path. And so I would imagine it creates certain habits in the way you make decisions. And yeah, and so like I admire Toby for that. That's such a cool nugget that it reminds me is like we need to revisit that because we've had conversations at the table. My son's 4, my daughter's 7. So the 7-year-old kind of gets things like when we like complex topics and things we can explain to her. The 4-year-old, he just wants to play dinosaur and break shit, right? So it's like trying to explain things to him.
Yeah.
But again, it's leading by example and it's setting those values. And so, so again, circling back to like, how do we raise good humans that are going to contribute to society and hopefully do more than what I'm doing right now at my age? Again, I think it comes back to those core values, and that's
like I want nothing more than my kids to like 10x, 100x anything that I've ever done.
Right.
And I've got high ambitions for myself, and so I want to set them up with the tools of here, like things. I don't have these written down. I need to write them down, but off the top of my head, things that I think they're important that you don't typically learn. I think what you said there is actually a really, really good nugget, like running your house like a business. And if you can understand that of like setting the vision, setting the mission, it's all about alignment. Cause I think that's where a lot of friction comes from a lack of alignment on like who's kind of taking what roles and what responsibilities, clearly defining those. And then there's like nothing's kind of left up for interpretation, right? Yeah. If we did that in a business, it just doesn't work.
Right.
Like you have to have all those things sorted out.
Yeah.
And your family life is the exact same way.
Sure.
I think other things would be really like just I want to teach my kids the concepts of like how to start a business and how to think about things.
Yeah.
How to think about time management and valuing like how I structure my days, why I structure my days the way that they are, how I prioritize my time, being guarded with things like that. Relationships. It's funny that it's not something it's like one of the relationships are what tie everybody together.
Yeah.
And it's something that we never spend any amount of time studying.
Right.
And there's lots of great literature out there around that. And then I think leading into that also communication and how to communicate with people, whether it's, with sales, right? And so being able to communicate with people from different backgrounds and different personalities.
Yeah.
And then also in just given different situations and just being comfortable to be able to articulate what it is that you're trying to do. I think also just sales skills from an early age is also wildly important because it doesn't matter who you are selling something. You're selling yourself at any given time. And so I think having those skills very early on, that leads me into a broader topic of storytelling.
Yeah.
Storytelling plays into sales, plays into communication, plays into relationships, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of a base layer for all those things. And so being able to understand how to kind of be able to craft a story, how to talk about these things, that goes into writing. I've undervalued writing my entire life up until recently, until really I started really over the last couple of years, I think with just like you realize the power of being able to articulate things very, very well, not just verbally, but also kind of in written form. I think it's wildly important, particularly with social media, personal finances. Yeah. What's the operating system for how you should think about personal finances? What's the operating system for thinking about investments?
Yeah.
Right. And there's so many different side things you can kind of go off there. But those are just some of the things that I think of that it was like, I look at those as very, very important things. I was never taught those at school. I was never taught those at home. So how can I instill those in my kids from like under 10 years old? Right. Set them up so by the time they're 15, by the time they're 20, this is all second nature to them.
Right.
You know, they've grown up with it. And
Yeah,
so then
it's
once they
habit
get
at
here,
that
like
point.
they are way ahead of the power curve for people who are 2-3 times their age.
Yeah.
You know, and then they can focus on other things to help them be more successful.
Yeah. Well, I just think the fact that you're even thinking about it at that depth is likely happening. And, you know, I struggle with it too, is it's like, you know, you want to set all these things, but then there's days where you're busy, you're tired, and then you kind of like, again, you don't necessarily keep on that path 100% of the time, but in the macro is like, as long as you're moving towards that and you're instilling the values. Again, the one thing that's like, it's tough to stay on track with is like screen time for our family. It's like, I'm pretty sure my kid could watch Bluey for 48 hours straight, not
Bluey's
blink.
great.
Right. I love Bluey. You know, but it's like the dude will like, and so I had this conversation this morning with my wife. Like he woke up and was like, there was this like big blowout because he wanted the iPad and my wife said no and this and that. And it's just like parenting has got to be one of the hardest roles in the world.
It is. You're responsible for whether this kid becomes a serial killer or not. You know what I mean? Exactly. Like, and if they do, it's totally on you.
Right. Well, it's I had this I was on this podcast called The Backpack Theory, and it's very similar to like how we're talking right now. It's mainly focused, and don't worry, folks, we're gonna get onto digital wildcatters, but clearly we're getting deep right now, which I like. And we're talking about, you know, right now people have it's easy for people to blame, right? It's like we blame technology for this, we blame technology for that, we blame people or organizations or whatever the case is. But at the end of the day, like I was telling on the podcast, like we don't have a technology problem, or we don't have this problem, we don't have that problem. We have a freaking parenting problem, because it's so easy for parents to go out for dinner or go to do things, and they blame technology for, you know, whether it's suicides or this or insecurities. But at the end of the day, the parents aren't there helping their kids build self-esteem. And what's the first thing that mommy and daddy do when they want a few minutes to chat or have a glass of wine? Boom, here's your iPad. Mm-hmm. So it's like, stop blaming everything else and focus on being a good parent, which is hard to do because you want to build a business, you want to do that, you still want to enjoy your time. And dude, it's tough. There's no right or wrong answer, but
you have to be intentional. And I think that if you're not explicitly intentional about the parent that you want to be, your default is to be the parent that, like your parents, essentially. You become that for better, for worse, depending on, you know, what your situation is. And so there's some very different things that I think I look at life differently. I think about life differently. And nothing against, you know, my parents divorced in an early age, so I've got like a bunch of parents. But yeah, I there's some lessons that I've applied from that, but also some things that I intentionally do very differently.
Yeah.
You know, and it is tough, especially, you know, long days sometimes to come in and, you know, be the parent that you know you want to be. Yeah. I think I try to look at this thing. I flip scenarios in my head of like, sometimes I dread certain things, particularly right now. It's like 105 degrees outside, like going outside and playing with the kids when it's like a sauna, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But if I flip it around to where, rather than just going and playing, is there something that I could teach them? Like the other day I taught my oldest how to change the oil in my car.
Dude,
so
that's awesome.
Step by step, we went through the whole thing.
How old is he?
He's 5.
Wow.
And so getting the tools, and then that was an opportunity for me to explain the different sizes and like the numbering system and like how all that works and like how it fits. How do you know whether a socket fits on there or not? Right. So it took me twice as long to do it.
I was going to say,
but I flipped the way that I looked at this process of like, I don't really feel like changing my oil, to like, hey, this is a learning opportunity for him.
Yeah.
Let me explain everything in excruciating detail so that he understands it. He retains everything that I tell him.
Wow.
The kid doesn't forget anything.
So, and I'm curious, because like I'm thinking in my head, like if I was to try and get my son, who's 4, so the maturity and the ability to pay attention is still probably not there, but like how much of his time, or like how much of his undivided attention did you get? Or did you just like, because I feel like a lot of times from both of my kids, like they're so bouncy and everything else, it's like if I get like a 2-minute window at most to be able to explain something, and then it's just like,
I think I don't ever push anything on him that he's not interested in.
Okay, so he was genuinely interested in learning.
So I asked him, I said, hey, I'm going to go change my oil. Do you want to help me?
Oh, okay.
Right. I didn't ask him if I want to teach him. I said, do you want to help me? And then I used that opportunity to teach. And so if he said no, I'd have been like, that's fine. I'm going to like, y'all can play outside.
Oh, okay. So it was, he's
interested in it because naturally with me, like I'm always like, you know, I've got, you know, a little sports car. I'm constantly watching videos on YouTube. He sees that. I buy him toys around cars. Like
Yeah.
he is becoming a little car guy. And so
Cool.
what I explained to him in that moment, I said, here, the reason that we're doing this is because when you have things like this, you have to take care of things like this, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a car, if you have a motorcycle, he wants a go-kart currently. I said, when you have a go-kart, we're going to have to do this. And so we're going to have to change the oil. So I explained the concept of what the oil was doing in the motor in the first place. It was also a good experience to tell him. I was like, where does oil come from? And he goes, the oil station. I said,
yeah,
not quite. I said, Daddy works in oil and gas. And he's like, yeah. And so then I explained high level, like where all this comes from. And then he was able to put together, this now goes into the car. This lubes up the engine.
He started figuring out the concept.
And then he sped it all back to me.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, he's actually like retained this. And then we go through the entire process. But
that's good.
There's like lessons to like all of that. And I definitely don't have all this figured out. This is just something that it's kind of like top of mind recently, but doing more of those things and changing my perspective of like, how can I, and I don't treat him like he's 5. I treat him like he's like 8 or 9.
Yeah. That's very similar to my daughter who's 7. I would say I can relate to you on that front. Like a lot of times she loves helping me with anything, like whether it's building things or putting things, putting things together, or like she's very much likes doing things. She's like me in school. She's like, Daddy, I don't like listening and doing things. She's like, I like to do the projects and I like gym. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like mirror splitting image of myself. And so, but I really can appreciate, it's like, instead of being like, oh, I got to go buy time and play, it's like, how can we use an opportunity to learn something? And so that's actually some really good insight.
It's also like, I think about what is the biggest thing that as parents that we are going to have to combat. We see it today with kids. It's probably going to be worse even with our kids. And that's this instant gratification, right? That's the one thing that I fear the most, because they have it with tablets, they have it with screens, they have it with phones. I feel like sometimes I'm addicted to social media in ways, and I hate that. And that's what I love about jiu-jitsu, is that to get your black belt in jiu-jitsu, this is going to take you 10, 12, 15 years. It's something that even if you're not an entrepreneur or somebody who's worked towards something as a bigger goal, jiu-jitsu is a great way to build up the long-term discipline and consistency to work towards something long-term. And so I want my kids to do jiu-jitsu for that point, but also with like Zane wants this go-kart. And so rather than me being like, oh, I'm just going to buy you this go-kart for Christmas, it's like $1,000 go-kart. And I want it for him because I want to like foster that. And like, if he can like, take up racing and stuff, then that's like really cool. I got Little League. He hopefully he's get racing, but rather than me doing that, he understands that I come to work, that I make money. Money is used to buy things for the house, to pay for vacations, for all that.
Yeah.
And we've beat that into him.
Yeah.
Right. And so he understands that. I'll go to the car dealership, like look at a Lamborghini or something. And he's like, Dad, can you buy this? And I'm like, if I do this, this, and this, I could buy this.
Right.
And so he understands, okay, this is really cool. This is a reality. So with this go-kart, printing off the go-kart, putting it on his wall, right? And then essentially building up like one of those little thermometers that you would have at like school fundraisers. Wow. And then saying, detailing out a roadmap of like, here's exactly what you need to do. And we're going to give you like chores, like all sorts of like crazy hard work. And it's not going to be easy stuff too.
Yeah.
I want to go in the backyard with like a hoe and like dig up stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like instill some hard work into them, and then show really them that you're going to be rewarded. We're going to put some in this little piggy bank for you.
Yeah.
Watch it climb over time.
Yep.
And if there's times where you want to put in a little extra work and you want to get there quicker, or if you don't want to work, guess what? It's just going to be stagnant. So have something that he wants at this point in time. He wants it more than anything, but rather than me giving it to him, make him work for it on this horizon of 5-6 months.
Wow. That's such a great way to do it, because it's so easy. And that's the trap that we run into, is like my daughter, so she loves singing and she's got a little taste of playing guitar, and she wanted a guitar. And I was like, don't worry. Like, she's like, oh, can we go get a guitar? I'm like, we're not going to go get a guitar right now. Like, we can certainly, that's something, if you really do enjoy it, we can talk about getting one for you if you want to continue to pursue guitar. And I was like, oh, it's Christmas soon. But in my mind, I'm like, how can she earn it? And that's a great example. It's like, okay, this is what you want. Here's what you're going to have to do to get there, and delay that gratification. And then of course she wants a new bike. And she's like, can we just go buy a new bike? And she understands, like, she's going to ask, even though she knows the answer is probably going to be like, well, no, we need to work for it. And then we need to save or whatever. But, again, just working towards something instead of just easily giving in and being like, because a lot of us, especially in oil and gas, and if we're doing well, we could easily just go to Target or wherever and just get, a go-kart. But man, and then instilling sort of the hard work to getting to something. In the moment, it's just like more energy that we have to pour out to like come up with a plan and commit to it. It's
that strategic planning that is the difference between the average Joe and the Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like studying those kinds of people. So allowing them at an early age to understand a vision board. I have a vision board. Mm-hmm. I plan for things.
Yeah.
You know, and so if they can learn this at 5, 6 years old, I mean, God, what can they do when they're a teen, when they're in their 20s?
Yeah.
You know, they're not playing catch up. They're ahead of anybody who's much older than them.
Yeah.
With kind of these foundational habits and kind of principles.
Yeah. No, speaking of principles, have you read Ray Dalio's book, Principles?
I read like half of it.
Okay.
I didn't read the other half.
Yeah. Because
it was good. I can't remember why. I probably just picked up a couple other books and just got lost in some other stuff.
Yeah. No, it's just when you said principles, it made me think of that. It's for anyone out there, I would check it out. I think the app is free. You can literally have the entire book, but it talks about core principles for business and then for his life. And a lot of that stuff is very much aligned, or it's very similar to what you're talking about, is if you live by these certain principles and guidelines, and everything you do is heading towards that end goal. Let's take a pivot and talk digital wildcatters. I feel like we could keep chatting about all this kind of stuff, but I want to respect your time. Get us caught up to speed on where we're at right now, starting with sort of the technology side. You've got Collide, and on the technology front, and then some upcoming events that take us towards the end of the year.
Whew. Okay. Yeah, where do we start? So I guess to kind of provide some context, let's take a little trip back to 2020. World is shut down. This is like our first year doing Wildcatters full time. Left everything else, sold our wells, left our other company, stopped consulting. We are 100% on Wildcatters. It doesn't make money yet, right? So great plan.
Yeah.
The world shuts down almost immediately when we go full time. We'd already been doing events at that point, and we kind of asked ourselves, what if the world never opens again? You know, and what does the future of this really look like? And so I think one of the most valuable thing that I think that we've been able to build is just a highly engaged community, right? And that's a very, very valuable resource to be able to leverage. And so we went out to the community. We had all this time on our hands, and asked people, you know, what's valuable? Like, what do you feel like is like missing in the grand scheme of things? Like, you're familiar with what we do, and especially then, everybody's working from home, nobody's connecting. It was like, man, we just need more resources to be able to like connect with, you know, people in the industry. You know, LinkedIn is just so horizontal. It's like every industry in the world. You know, it's good for like our career stuff, but like it's just not really built for like our industry, you know, specifically. And so we just took tons and tons and tons of notes. And so really the feedback that we got was we needed something that looked like Reddit almost, but for energy specifically, right? And so, and then even more specifically, there are some platforms that we have studied and used from like the software development world that have become like household names for software developers. One in particular is called Stack Overflow. And so Stack Overflow is like this community for developers where they can go, and if you have a technical challenge or a question, right, you can pop on there. For one, you can query and see if anybody's asked this prior. So whenever you type in whatever your question is, it's going to return people who've had that question before. And rather than allowing you to ask the same question over and over again, it will automatically refer you to that one question. And then you can go in there and see like, hey, did this answer my question, yes or no? And you can kind of see the responses. And the responses get upvoted or downvoted based on the relevancy and accuracy of that response.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
So for the people who are responding, it gamifies that, saying, oh, you're like really well known. You're kind of building up a reputation in the certain category, right? And so you think about that from energy is arguably one of the most technical industries in the entire world, and nothing like that exists, right? So think about, I think back to when we had our wells, our little operation up in Tulsa. We're doing a workover. We had a technical question. we didn't know the answer to it. It wasn't something you can Google, wasn't something I had books on, wasn't something I could look up on YouTube.
Right.
So what do? You pick up the phone, you start calling people, right?
Yeah.
And you call and you call and you call and you say, hey, have you ever seen anything like this? What do you think, right?
Yeah.
For our operation, it wasn't like mission critical or anything, but you imagine you have like a big rig out there, you're running up a day rate, you've got crews, you've got something down hole, like you're running up the clock, and you've got all these old guys that are getting out of the industry, taking all this knowledge with them.
Yeah.
So what do? You call old people you worked with, maybe old professors, old colleagues, whatever, to try to get an answer to something. Well, why don't we just take a lesson from Stack Overflow and apply it to energy, to where now you can build up this repository of knowledge sharing, right? So you solve this problem of the Great Crew Change, people taking all this tribal knowledge with them, and you start to index this information to make it available to be queried.
Yeah.
So you can find those answers.
Right.
While simultaneously building up more of a reputation, a dynamic resume versus a static resume of like, what do you actually know? Whenever I hire a developer, I don't look at the resume. I don't care where you worked. I care about what you can do.
Right.
So I look at your GitHub, I look at your code. We do a coding challenge, right? A lot of the same things apply in energy. And so by just contributing and then the community upvoting your stuff and crowdsourcing and saying, this guy really knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
That's really, really valuable. And then you can plug that into the recruiting functionality, the ability to go and find jobs on Collide, to find groups of people who are interested or work in the same disciplines that you do, or are interested in, AI, or are doing projects in the Eagleford or the Barnett. You think about a lot of the different ways that like Facebook has kind of brought people together. Yeah. We want to do that more on the technical side of energy. So it's not meant to be a LinkedIn replacement. That's not the goal. Right. The goal is to be more of this resource for the community. We can keep bolting on different tools, resources to help people grow, upskill, courses, certifications, lots of like really cool things that we're planning on building into that. Yeah.
So there's obviously, there's a ton of opportunity there. But for someone who's listening for the first time, they're like, this Jake guy's crazy. This digital Wildcatters company sounds like they're off to some cool stuff. I want to try this Collide thing. So like what, as someone who's kind of fresh into, because a lot of your community has been following you guys, and obviously you guys have bolted on more people and built over time. But for someone who's just never heard of you, walk them through, okay, like here's what to expect. And if you're this avatar, this is a great reason why you should download Collide right now and jump on and start learning or contributing. Like, what does that look like for someone who's like just blank to this?
I think it depends on the persona. So I think that our content has been utilized by a lot of people who come into the industry and they just start Googling stuff and our stuff comes up. So from like, oil 101, kind of getting caught up to speed on terminology, slang, the culture, how to sell, how to market, how to build products. There's a lot of good insights for that. But I think even the most seasoned people, nobody knows everything, and so being able to pop in and find answers to certain questions. It could be simple as, hey, we're looking at, an acquisition over here. Has anybody got a recommend? Does anybody know that this seller? Has anybody ever worked with this operator? Does anybody have any issues with them? You see people commenting all the time, hey, I need to buy an H pump in this area. Who's selling something? Like things like that you're not going to see. Cool. On LinkedIn.
Gotcha. No, that's and so it's easy to sign up. You just download the app.
Yeah, just download the app. It's on the Apple App Store. It's on Google. It's on online. You can go to Collide.io.
Cool. And the mechanics behind it is very much like, is it forum style, or is there like, and then you can DM, or how does that?
Yeah,
what does that look like?
You can also DM. You could do group messaging. The feed currently, I think, is going to change a little bit from what we in the next version is going to change to where it looks a little bit more. Right now, it's kind of got just a normal feed where you can kind of just infinity scroll. I think it's going to be more Reddit style with individual topics. Gotcha. To make a scan, and I think that you also have some ability to change what you want in your feed. Reddit has that as well, where you have like a couple different ways that you can see your feed. We can pull in news, things like that. So gotcha. The idea is to really be a hub for the community. So we've already got like news that's piped in, kind of cutting edge stuff. So you can pop in there, see what's happening, the latest stuff that's happening in the world.
Fascinating. Okay.
But soon you'll have all the job listings as well. So if you're looking for a new gig, anything that's happening in this space, you'll be able to find.
Perfect. Well, if you're listening and you haven't yet downloaded Collide, check it out, play around with it. I mean, again, the community's awesome. The level of expertise. I mean, I know some folks that have been on there. I'll be honest, I haven't. I downloaded it just now because there was another version that wasn't the app.
This is like version 4.
Yeah. Okay. Because I think I may have been still on like version 1, but nonetheless, yeah, again, check it out. And then shifting to the event side, which I would say most people are very much familiar with Tech Night, which you guys have expanded. Now you were in Denver, you're in Oklahoma, Midland obviously.
And then
where else?
OKC.
Okay, yeah.
And then Houston.
Are you guys going to do it in PA, or is that not?
I don't know. We've thought about it. So for next year, we're doing those same 4 places, and then we're also adding in DFW. So we're doing 5 ETNs in 24.
Awesome.
We've got Empower in March, and then at the end of the year. So this year, we still haven't done Fuse. So Fuse, October 30th and 31st, which is like our South by Southwest of energy tech.
Yeah, that one's awesome.
We've got some really big names speaking. John Arnold, who is the now billionaire trader from Enron that went on to Satara, made a ton of money. Now he does a lot of philanthropy stuff, but he's on the board of Grid United, run by Mike Skelly. So he's speaking. We've got people from like Devon. We've got people from Green Lake, a bunch of other companies. So
yeah, that's
going to be a really, really good time. So 2 days here, 713, downtown Houston.
Yeah. Are you guys doing it at the same brewery as you did last year?
No, 713 Music Hall.
Oh, the Music Hall. Yeah.
Okay. So we moved. Just a lot of challenges. So the first year, for those listening, both Empower and Fuse were festival style, meaning predominantly outside.
Yeah.
Right? And so we did
I remember
East Downtown. We got the Eighth Wonder Brewery and the distillery for Empower, and then for Fuse we had those 2, but then we also took over Sunset, Truck Yard, Miss Carousel, a couple other venues, and then shut down all the streets in between. That's challenging. When you're shutting down roads, and you have to have like 30 cops on payroll, and you've got to set up infrastructure with generators and staging and tents and building a VIP area and restrooms and food, and it's a lot.
God,
right?
Dude, I can imagine.
It was really cool and really, really special. But I think also one of the things that we realized is that people love AC. Despite the weather being good, both of those days, people love AC, they love being inside. And 713 is just a great venue.
Yeah.
And it's a lighter lift for us, to be honest with you. It's a little bit more turnkey, not having to worry about all the details of setting anything up.
You guys had, because I was there it was a Bitcoin conference you guys had, wasn't it? Empower, yeah. So okay, I think I went to that not even last year. Anyway, it's a beautiful venue. It's again, parking's fairly easy. Which again the Eighth Wonder, I think I remember, or the one that the one you were talking about. What was the one that rained that morning of? Was that was Fuse, right?
That was the first Empower,
or that was the first Empower? Okay, but that in Edo there, it was like it came down like a tsunami, and then all of a sudden I was like,
we're done for. Yeah, because like the whole first hour of Empower, there's a line like 2 blocks. We have video footage of it of people like waiting to register, and they're just like standing in the rain. And then you have like water that's like flooding in, hitting all the electronics and the power stuff. And I was like, oh, dude, this is it. So that was a big driver for us. It was like we almost got bit there. The rain stopped, the clouds parted, sun came out, it ended up being perfect.
Yeah.
And then Fuse, we got lucky with the weather too, but it were like you do this so many times, you're going to get bit, like in a really big way. And that was a risk that we just were not willing to take.
I don't blame you. No, that the 713 is cool, and they got like other shops and stuff in there, and like little restaurants, and So yeah, it's well set up for events, and it's cool inside too. Like it's space. There's a lot of space, and you can still have like your booths and stuff on the outside. So no, that's a great venue there, in downtown, so people can stay. Obviously, a ton of hotels.
Yeah, there's so many. Like, and then we're doing like an after party at McIntyre's.
Oh, nice.
That's like a block away. So yeah, it's just a great venue.
Perfect. And so again, go through it real quick. So the next one coming up is Fuse, right, in October. And again, high level, what is sort of the core, what's the thesis behind Fuse? Because Empower is more for Bitcoin and energy.
Yeah, it's bringing Bitcoin mining and energy together. And then with Fuse, it's really showcasing all of the cutting edge emerging technologies that are happening in this space. And it's predominantly going to be upstream oil and gas. That's the reality of who most of our community is. But also bringing in some of like the newer energies groups at some of these companies like Chevron. We've got Chris Power speaking, who's covering carbon capture for them.
Cool.
In other ways, like different integrated energy systems. And so whether that be around energy storage, whether it be geothermal and all the lessons that we've learned as an industry from, punching a bunch of holes in the ground and how that's applied to geothermal, but then also this traditional space of oil and gas, whether it be digital stuff, whether it be AI, production optimization, field stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If it's cutting edge and it's game changing, we want to have you there.
Perfect. I've had conversations with folks on the podcast talking about, the future of energy demand going up, places like Asia and Africa, and like the amount of energy that's going to be required just to fulfill everyone's needs. Not one sector is going to do it all. And I feel like a lot of the conversations I've had, you still have the extremes. It's like us against the world, right? Whether it be on, let's just call it renewables and oil and gas, just to keep it simple. There's still that tension between the two. It's a tug of war. I mean, to me, there seems to be appetite. Whereas if you could bring all the energy, like the major energy sectors together, is that something that has ever crossed your guys' minds? Or have you guys had discussions in terms of bringing in like oil and gas and call it solar, wind, and all the other nuclear? Like,
we did that last year with Fuse last year. And I think that, I think that we didn't see, I think kind of going back to that, we didn't see a ton of engagement from call it across the aisle. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like we had a couple big players on the renewable side that kind of participated, but we reached out to tons of nuclear companies. Not a single one got involved.
Interesting.
We did have geothermal represented. We had energy storage represented.
I
And you're
imagine
going to
it's
see
tough.
that we've got like the CEO of, I think, EDPR is speaking this year. And so, yeah, so I think that is a big part of it, but it's not as much of a heavy emphasis as it was last year due to the feedback we've gotten from people across the aisle.
Interesting. No, and that's, again,
but it's part
be
of
a challenge.
A bigger mission outside of Fuse of like digital Wildcatters, I think, is to bridge that gap between the traditional energy and new energies, because I think it is an all of the above approach. There are certain things that make sense, but I think it is more of an integrated energy system to where a lot of these different things are playing off of each other, even on single commingled locations.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're starting to see, again, I live in the drilling world, and a lot of the drilling rigs are now powered by electricity, which are being powered by, even just like local grids, right? Which is cool to see. And then those grids, if you're here in Texas, could be a combination of wind, solar, everything else. And so, you're starting to see drilling or like upstream operations powered by new energy, which I think is fascinating. And so, I think the integration piece is again, it's necessary. And, it'd be great to have everyone in the room or at the conference or something. I think we're ways away, but I was just curious, and I didn't realize Fuse had that sort of mix last year, which, again, if it wasn't a win, at least you kind of got a data point to say, okay, here's where we're at, here's where we were at, and then, down the road, let's see if we can improve on that.
Yeah, I think we have spent a significant amount of time building up the core of the community in oil and gas.
Yeah.
Right. And so, while, people may know us in this space, you go over to the nuclear industry and nobody has a clue who we are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right,
so there's its own challenges, but I think over time, as we begin to just kind of create more and more content and continue to grow that community.
Yeah.
And I think Collide helps with that. Then I think, we continue to bridge that gap, but I just think it's going to be a little bit of a larger or longer time horizon than what we had originally anticipated.
Yeah. And by no means, I think it's, again, you don't want to jump out and pursue that too heavily right out of the gate, because you want to stick to what you know in your core community, right? And build off that. And so I was just curious more than anything, because you're not seeing that anywhere else, right? Like,
yeah.
And I would say I don't know any other sort of, you guys are unique in itself, but I feel like you guys could be a huge contributor to bridging that gap just by way of community.
Yeah.
So, but again,
I think to truly, truly do that, I think effectively, I think you have to do it at a ridiculously large scale. Like, I think we would have to do it at like, for lack of a better example, would be like a George R. Brown, like literally taking up all of George R. Brown, like an OTC style.
Yeah.
And then just going heavier, because an event is a marketplace, right?
Right.
So if you strip everything else away, you've got sponsors, you've got exhibitors, you've got attendees. And so it's essentially matching buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
Right. And so to do that effectively, especially when you're trying to go horizontal across a lot of different energy verticals, like you need scale, I think.
Yeah.
Like, and you need space to do that.
Yeah.
And that's really, it's like hard enough to do it in one, and you try to go across like 7. That's really particularly challenging.
And you also need like the level of influence too, right? Like you guys heavily influence the industry. I don't know if there's any, I was asking somebody, I'm like, are there any influencers and I hate the term, but the reality is, it's like if you have someone as an authority who's well represented, who can help influence the industry, whether it be decision making or whatever, or just thought leadership. Like, I don't know if there are people in other energy verticals that are like, call it like a Toby Rice, or even like you guys, or whoever, Chris Wrights. I mean, are you familiar with any other people outside of oil and gas that are speaking from the top of the mountain place?
We had Mike Skelly speak last year at Fuse.
And who is that?
So he started a few different companies, but he's focused a lot of his attention on long distance transmission lines.
Okay.
And that's what Grid United does. He's doing it for the second time. A little bit of different technology, but that plays a huge part in kind of revitalizing the grid and actually getting power to where it needs to be.
Gotcha.
I think he's very outspoken, very well known. But I don't think that there's many. There's a guy that we may have speaking at Fuse this year on nuclear, who has a big podcast on nuclear. His name's Brett. But outside of like those two that immediately kind of come to mind, I'm sure there are. I'm just not aware of who they would be.
Yeah, no, I would be fascinated to, and if you're listening and you know of one, let me know, because I want to have them on the podcast, because I have, again, trying to broaden my horizons. But no, that's great. So obviously you got your events, you got Collide. Anything else that you want anything else to let the audience know about that's worth mentioning?
I don't know. I just turned 34. I'm getting old.
It's not bad, dude. You got like 3 lifetimes ahead of you, man.
I know. But I was like, oh man, 6 years to 40.
Don't think of it like that, man. With all these peptides and everything, man, you'll be 50 and you'll look like you're 28.
I've been doing like skincare routines and stuff, trying to get my life together.
Tell you what, yeah, it's all good. So you still doing jiu-jitsu?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
You recovered from your leg injury,
yeah.
I see. You
got my blue belt recently.
Congrats.
Yeah.
That's huge.
One step forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, finally. No, I mean, my knees still give me issues, but
yeah.
Yeah, man, just rocking and rolling, kicking ass.
That's it. Lastly, any trends in technology or anything that's really got you excited that's sort of popping off right now on the technology
front? This is
front?
such a cop-out answer, but AI, I mean, that's what everybody's interested in right now. But I've dove deep into a lot of different kinds of AI and really just kind of like starting to see how all this kind of plays out. Like, it's just so powerful, dude. Like,
I give one small example, because obviously there's a ton, but it's like one example.
I have some form of AI open on my computer at all times, and I use it multiple times an hour.
Yeah.
Throughout my workday.
And so, was that like, are you talking about like ChatGPT, or are you talking about like, what are you talking about specifically?
Those for normal work stuff, ChatGPT, Claude, and Bard. They're all relatively similar. I've kind of found different use cases where one outperforms the others.
Same here, yeah.
And
I use Bard and ChatGPT like multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the other one you said?
Claude.
Claude? What is that?
It's another one. It's actually ranked or benchmarked higher than ChatGPT.
Really?
Yeah. But they just put a cap on it. So I'm like, I don't want to pay another pro subscription.
Right.
So now they have a cap on how many you can do. But you see the drop off in just search volume on like Google. That changes the game for like SEO driven businesses.
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff,
No, that's what fascinates me, is the whole advertising space. Because I now use, where I used to use Google, I now use Bard.
Because I want you just to give me the answer. I don't want to search for things and come to the answer myself.
Yeah, no, it's it. And then ChatGPT I use more for like the creative execution on content, or whether it's stuff for work or anything, right? And so like each one has its sort of specialty. Yeah. But yeah, like Google now, unless I'm trying to find a specific, like a website on something, I would say now it's more like 60-40 Bard to Google. And I see that just becoming more, but now Google has its own, it's like a beta version of AI. And so it's kind of like plugging in Bard in there, or not Bard, or whatever.
Their own version.
Their own, yeah. Called, yeah. And so, but dude, everyone's going to compete for that. So it's like, dude, 2 years from now, I can't even fathom what all this is going to be like.
It's wild, but just to see how quickly you could do things that would normally take days, weeks, months to do, I can do almost instantly. Oh yeah. Even like, I don't know, I prompt things all the time. Even on like the mobile version of like I'm looking for some land right now. And so I had the other day, I was just like, I came across them with FHA loans, and I was just like, hey, explain all the various loans here. I'll take into consideration I'm a veteran. I want to know the requirements. I want to know like interest rates.
Laid it out.
laid it all out. And I was like, okay. And then I had some other stuff that I was interested about. So like I'm using this, taking notes, and then building out kind of a game plan for like what is the best kind of loan to go and buy the land. And
man, that right there is so powerful because it takes research time down to like fractions.
Yeah.
Like I was trying to,
here's my requirement. Like I automatically, it was like the requirements for these things didn't make sense.
So
and I was
cool.
like, okay, so I know it's this.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to be going. So now, if I had the ability to like when ChatGPT had internet access, dude, that was some wild stuff. And then some of the other AIs do. If you really want to like
real time,
really roll up your sleeves and like either build something or access something. Like there's other tools out there you can use. I haven't done that. I just don't have the time to dedicate to it. But when I did have for that window of time and had access to the internet, it was like really, really powerful.
No kidding.
Because you could have it return whatever you wanted, right? And so now, like I just think about it from a real estate perspective because that's essentially what I'm using it for. It's like for real estate investing. I know you all do some stuff like that too, but if I could plug into like AirDNA and then have it scout like, hey, spit back the areas that are the most traveled with the highest utilization rates. And then let's do an equation on average home price. Let's look at also take into consideration beds, things like that. And then what is upfront capital cost? Play this into my loan. What is the down payment that I need? And then do this across 5 states, spit back my best opportunities. Now go find land that meets this criteria. Take my business plan from this, run out a financial model for it. Like to do all of that, which would normally take months, and then being able to do that at scale very quickly through prompts. Is game changing. You still have to have the vision of what you're wanting to accomplish.
And like, you still need some experience.
And you still need some experience. Like if you know things, you can query it better than somebody who doesn't know something.
Correct.
Whatever that topic is. But to be able to get it to do all of these tasks for you is game changing.
Yeah. I love how we went from like during 2020, it was all about blockchain and NFTs. And all of a sudden AI just like came in with a tidal wave and just knocked all that out. And now it's just all about AI.
Me and John are constantly sending like, we follow all the AI Instagrams and TikToks and stuff. And like every day we're sending all these crazy new tools. I'm signing up for all this new stuff and new plugins. And
it's insane, man.
It's
hard to keep up with. It's been a blast. I appreciate your time. For the listeners out there, connect with Jake. Like you said, he's not really on social media, but connect with Jake through Digital Wildcatters. If you're in the Houston area, you got to check out, sign up for Fuse. Again, appreciate everything you guys are doing, building the community. I'm going to get on Collide and I want to be a contributor. And for the listeners out there, share this. If you haven't, please leave a review, subscribe. I've got an Instagram channel now. I'm broadening my horizons. I got a little team helping me with some content and marketing. So again, I'm nowhere near these boys, but again, it's fun having conversations with you and the rest of the group. Nothing but the best. And for everyone out there, always remember, everyone deserves access to energy, and we is greater than me. Peace.